Good Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock. Time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you had a great weekend. Plenty of Browns to talk about. The NFL Scouting Combine gets underway tomorrow in Indianapolis. We will be there tomorrow and Wednesday. We'll hear from Kevin Stefanski. We'll hear from Andrew Berry tomorrow as well. Kevin Stefanski making some news over the weekend, added to his coaching staff as a former Vikings offensive coordinator when Stefanski was there. Bill Musgrave is the Browns senior assistant on offense. Alex Van Pelt has added the quarterback coaching duties to his title like it was in 2020 and 2021. That being tweeted out by Mary Kay Cabot. 2 seasons under Musgrave. Derek Carr passed for almost 8,000 yards, 60 touchdowns. So 2 of his better years when Musgrave was with the Raiders. Musgrave has also coached Michael Vick, Matt Schaub when he had good years, Matt Ryan, to some of their best seasons as quarterbacks. Let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff, I was looking for a fresh set of eyes, same coaching tree, but I think Musgrave gives them that. What are your thoughts on Musgrave and then Alex Van Pelt being quarterback coach again?
I think with the hiring of Bill Musgrave, I think first thing you look for Coach Stefanski is, you've made an upgrade to the defensive side of the ball with your coordinator. You feel like you have made an upgrade with your special teams coordinator. You're happy with the work that Alex Van Pelt has done to this point. But, whatever your feelings are as Coach Stefanski is as far as, how safe is he, how safe isn't he? For me, this kind of looks an awful lot like calling in a lifeline. Somebody that you trust, somebody you're bringing in, and not saying that, guys on the offensive, coaching staff, are not guys he can trust. But you go back to somebody, that brought you through. And, part of the reason why Coach Stefanski has had the career he has is obviously work, within the Minnesota Vikings organization, certainly with Bill Musgrave. And, there may be times where, hey, look, Coach, the offense, I took parts of this from you, but you want to know what? I'm struggling here. We've had issues, with 8 to 15 yards between the hash marks over the middle in certain situations. Give me a fresh opinion. What am I missing here that maybe, we worked on together and I can't just piece it all together here? I think he's going to work as a fantastic resource for both Coach Stefanski and Coach Van Pelt. A ton of experience. He's coached a ton in the NFL. He's been in the college ranks, coming here now from a couple of years at Cal, ran a lot of 11 personnel. They actually ran the football a lot out of shotgun at Cal the past couple of years. We all talked about this, and this is a transition. We think this Browns offense is going to, not be 100% committed to, but probably more running out of the shotgun than we've been used to in the years past with Nick Chubb as him and Deshaun Watson try to find a little bit more common ground. With Alex Van Pelt going back to basically wearing the 2 hats of quarterback coach and offensive coordinator, I think for the Browns, maybe they viewed this as a case where maybe less voices in the room was maybe a little bit better for Deshaun Watson. Obviously, so much came at him last year, all the personal stuff going on, coming to a new organization after 700 days away from the game. So maybe they felt, a little bit, less was more here. We know Deshaun Watson has a great relationship with his own quarterback coach, Quincy Avery. So sometimes you might get in a situation where, have his personal quarterback coach, and maybe, you bring in a quarterback coach, maybe something's getting too redundant. Some things are getting missed. Some things not getting enough attention. So I think they said, you want to know what? Baker Mayfield had his best year with Alex Van Pelt as quarterback coach in 2020 while he was the offense coordinator. Why don't we just go with that for now? And, that allows us to bring in a veteran guy like Bill Musgrave, who can kind of be, the eyes and the ears from a distance for both these guys.
Yeah, and along those lines, so Deshaun Watson on the Q with Quincy Avery, his quarterback coach, radio show, talked about the new offensive staff, how it will affect him. And Quincy Avery, a lot of fans thought he might be the quarterback coach. He said, nah, he wasn't interested in that.
For one, fans, I'm not going to be the quarterback coach there because people keep asking me that. I'm not going to go to Cleveland. But, do you care, or is it like you just trust Kevin so much, like whatever he does, it's going to be a right fit?
Yeah, I trust Kevin. I trust Kevin. ABP is still going to be in the room, but I trust Kevin, AB. and being able to have two guys that, understand what I want, that ask me questions, that's very transparent. And I just want somebody that's a great teacher, that I can learn from. I'm one of the guys, I love to be Coach Hard. And I'm pretty sure you said it before because, you've been around me since I was a little kid. It's like, I like the coach that gets on my ass about a certain drill or a certain play or certain things like that. I don't, the pat on the back or just like, oh, we're getting next time. Like, that's not really me. I like to be Coach Hard because I know how great I am. I know my standard. So being able to have that in the room is definitely going to be key. I haven't talked to Kevin personally. I'm supposed to be calling him soon to try to figure out the coaching situation. But I know whoever they get is going to be, that's what I want is a great teacher that I can learn from.
And obviously that was before they named Bill Musgrave over the weekend. So the thing that you see, he's in a good place with the coaching staff as well as the front office. They're talking about what he needs to be successful.
Well, and first things first, look, if Quincy Avery ever wanted to go into the coaching ranks, it would have been a long time ago. So that certainly would have been a possibility for him. But I think for Deshaun, you just hear a different tone in his voice. Everything is now behind him. It is nothing but football, hopefully, obviously, from here on forward. So, he is going into this offseason, doesn't have to worry about getting moved, doesn't have to worry about the possibility of a contract extension, doesn't have to worry about learning a new offense, new personnel, new coaches. So Deshaun goes into a situation where his head is a lot much clearer. It's just more focused and it's football oriented. The fact that he even played, he certainly played last year, but there was just so much more going on and so many other outside factors other than just football. For Deshaun now, it's 100% football again. And I think he truly understands, and he understands the position. He understands, I need to be pushed hard, even sometimes if I don't deserve it, because that's the tone. The stars get pushed hard. The quarterback should get pushed hard. He's held to a standard, higher standard than other players. You like hearing exactly what Deshaun is, saying to this point. And you certainly, get the vibe from Deshaun that he's very excited to get back to work.
Without question. So I mentioned earlier, NFL Scouting Combine gets underway tomorrow. We'll be there tomorrow and Wednesday. What are you looking for? What do you want to? What do you think comes out of this? What do you want to hear? What do you want to see?
Well, this is twofold. I mean, obviously, this is where basically the juicy tea starts to drop, so to speak. A player like John Johnson III. We're all going to be sitting around waiting, most likely, from that tweet from Mary Kay Cabot. The Browns have let teams know that John Johnson III may be available via trade. I think we're going to start to, you hear the rumblings of what prospective contracts and money wants will be out there for the defensive tackles that are going to hit free agency. Obviously, all the Browns and all Browns fans are certainly have a market like that and have their eyes on that. Once we get to, the kids themselves, I mean, Thursday is, your defensive line day. You have defensive line, you have linebackers going that day. Browns, obviously, with some interest all over the place there. The next day, we go with the secondary players. Again, that is a room. If you do move on from John Johnson III, the Browns are going to have some interest in. We know how much the Cleveland Browns love their defensive backs. It's one position they never feel they have too many of. So we get to see those guys on Friday. Then you get to, the wide receivers and the tight ends on Saturday. You get to the running backs and the offensive linemen on Sunday. And it's just starting to see, things that match up here, because what we know from the Cleveland Browns is they like a really solid recipe of, where age factors in. They want the kids hopefully to be as young as possible. They want them to hit athletic testing marks. They want them to have had production at the schools they're coming from. The Browns like a nice, basically, conglomerate for these guys to hit all these boxes as they start to assemble the board. And, you get some anomalies. We get some weird things. A guy like Jordan Davis last year who blazed that 40 time that he did. There's the tight end from Georgia, 6'7", 270. They're talking he may crack 4.7 in the 40. You get guys who are going to back out of it, whether it's due to injury or they just don't feel it's the best position for them to go in there and have the most success. And then you get guys where they're injured, dinged up, a guy – quarterback from Georgia, obviously. I mean, from Alabama, not looking to participate this week. Everybody, the question on him is weight, so to speak. So I'm assuming the young man is shoveling as much food as possible as he can to go in there and make sure he clears that 205 mark, which, seems to be a huge thing for scouts. It's always one of my more favorite weeks of the NFL, and for me, it's the true kickoff to the NFL offseason.
Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at what NFL teams have the most work to do in a dream scenario in the draft. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. Just one quick thing for you today. Why is everybody writing off David Bell? I mean, let the guy be healthy for a year, see what he could do. But anyways, as always, great show. Love you, brother, and be safe.
Appreciate all the voicemails, Jeff. I'm certainly not writing off David Bell, but I do think that they need a speed kind of guy that threatens the defense, and that's not David Bell's game. David Bell's a guy that runs pretty good routes, catches the ball when it's thrown to him usually.
There's no question that adding a deep vertical threat to this offense probably would open things up a ton. David Bell played over 40% of the snaps last year. The production, could it have been better? I think Browns fans would have wished that it would have been better, certainly. But you also look at the scenario. If there any one of those receivers who played the majority, Amari, Donovan, David Bell was the guy that was going to have the most difficult time going from one veteran quarterback for 11 weeks to another veteran quarterback for the final 6 weeks. You get comfortable, you get your feet wet, you get your understanding, and now you're going to go play with a guy like Deshaun Watson where everything was coming at a quicker pace. He just plays at a faster level. Everything he does is just quicker. So it was certainly going to be a tough spot for David there. There are guys who could maybe be possibility guys who challenge the field vertically. But for the Browns, with the success of Amari Cooper, with the success of Donovan Peoples-Jones, with the success of David Njoku, having a guy like David Bell, who just seems to be a guy, not all that we saw last year, but, the resume was, here's a guy that seems to get open a ton and catches pretty much everything you throw to him. With Jacoby Brissett, you didn't get that opportunity. Jacoby often, it was either thrown to Cooper, it was either thrown to Donovan, it was thrown to David Njoku, and there wasn't much love for basically the fourth and fifth options. David Bell, that's for now is going to be what he will be, the fourth or fifth option. I think he's capable of it, but there's no doubt a little sizzle and a little juice is needed for that offense.
All right, this coming from Greg Newsom. He tweets out, see you all in May, signed out. Of course, created a little bit of a stir when was asked by a fan about playing in the slot, and he said no, capital N-O. So it sounds like he's done with social media, and I respect that.
I think everybody, to a man, to a woman, could all agree that maybe a little break from social media is not the worst thing in the world. And look, players and athletes, celebrities, they all know what they're doing. They can put things out there just for the sake that people are going to talk about the fact that, they're not talking. But, with Greg, maybe it's just time to, reset the Jets. Maybe there's a vacation planned. Maybe it's time to start going and getting back into your extensive workouts. Greg has always been a guy that was, pretty, popular with fans on social media, a lot of interactions. We all know about his, his affinity for his alma mater, Northwestern, and all their sports teams there. But, sometimes it's just time to get your head right. And I think for Greg Newsom, whatever the next step will be, and I think for all intents and purposes, it will be with Cleveland. Maybe it's time to immerse yourself into a Jim Schwartz defense. It's time to get yourself physically acclimated to, gearing up for yet another season in the NFL.
All right, NFL teams with the most work to do at the NFL Combine. This from the Bleacher Report. The Browns, like the Eagles, the Browns also need to uncover quality players middle and late rounds who can contribute over the long haul. Because of the Watson acquisition, Cleveland won't select in the first round again until 2025. Jeff, Yes, they have to draft better in the later rounds without question. As far as the cap concerns, they're going to keep rolling that down the hill as far as they can.
That's become the norm in the league. I mean, the New Orleans Saints have set this plan here that everybody just seems to follow. And, everybody, oh, no, this team has no cap space. And the next thing you know, they're north of $50 million in cap space. It's the way the contracts are, written. It's the way that they're designed. To always make sure that, if your team is in the hunt, you can go out and basically bring in that hired gun, so to speak, if you need to. As far as, prospective, draft prospects here this week, it's like I said, it's about checking the box. Are they big enough? Are they long enough? Are they athletic enough? Did they, test as true athletes? Where was the athletic testing at? Was it good enough? Was it not good enough? All of this stuff factors in heavily as you start to put together a draft board here. And, for the Browns, there's certain positional groups, certainly on defense, where their eyes are going to be very, very focused. Safety position, most likely linebacker position. We know they're going to have, eyes all over the place as far as the edge rushers and the defensive tackles. This is stuff where you are now taking this defense, and we're talking about a former defense coordinator in Joe Woods who had an affinity for defensive backs. It's not that Jim Schwartz ignores defensive backs. Jim Schwartz wants to cover up defensive back by having a very, very active defensive line. Guys that can get after the quarterback, make it a long day and make the life on the defensive backs easier. All of this stuff you don't find out in the coming days, and obviously, pro days and all that stuff as we start to, move towards the last week of April and the 23 draft.
Along those lines, identifying every NFL team's dream draft target for 2023, this again by the Bleacher Report. For the Browns, they say Kalisha Cansey, defensive lineman from Pitt. Cansey has game-wrecking potential in the middle, although he'll be labeled undersized at 6 foot 280 or so. Cansey amassed 27.5 tackles for loss, 14.5 sacks over the last 2 seasons. I got to be honest, if you're telling me undersized tackle just based on what's been there before, I'm getting a little nervous. But you tell me the numbers Cansey has had, and that's impressive production.
Well, the thing, and with Cansey, but you talk about the tackles for loss. You talk about being able to get in the backfield, getting after the quarterback. That's well and good, and it's very positive for a young player coming into the NFL. But you do have some pause and hesitation of, well, is this guy a full-time defensive tackle, or is this guy a defensive tackle who maybe plays and excels in nickel and dime situations? For me, that makes it a difficult guy to maybe judge at 42. Plus, now after 3 years, we have all the data of everybody the Browns have basically selected to this point. The Andrew Berry regime to this point has drafted 3 defensive tackles. Jordan Elliott, 6'4", 300 pounds. Tommy Togiai, 6'2", 300 pounds. Perrion Winfrey, 6'4", 290 pounds. So looking at a guy who's 6 foot 280, and keep in mind that's where he's at for now. Things could maybe change a tad bit when we get officials on Wednesday and Thursday, when we get to know a little bit more about these defensive line guys. Then you're going to see where you're at, because for me, I think for the first thing, not that he's not a good player, not that his tape is not exciting. I think first things first, you're looking for guys who can come in and contribute in base situations and get you to 2nd and 8, get you to 3rd and 6, where the Browns with Alex Wright, with Isaiah Thomas, with Myles Garrett, whoever else they bring in, they can maybe start going a little bit more NASCAR on the defensive line in obvious pass rush situations. When you have this data, a guy like Cansey, as appealing as he may be on tape and production-wise, that size speaks for itself. And looking at the guys that they have picked to play defensive line ahead of him, it seems like that would be a tough pill to swallow in the office in Berea.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. All right, before we go to break, Deshaun Watson from the Q with Quincy Avery, that's, again, his personal quarterback coach, talking about the Browns' offense last year and some of the challenges he had.
Things changed. You know what I'm saying? They had to tailor around Jacoby. Whatever, Jacoby was comfortable with, whatever he was happy with, whatever made him play his best, that's what they had to tailor around. And I'm a different, type of quarterback. Jacoby does do a lot of similar things. We think a lot. But, with certain, 3rd down runs and certain RPOs and things like that.
I love Jacoby to death. You can move better than Jacoby. You don't have to be so – Jacoby wouldn't be mad if you said that you can move better than him.
Yeah, Jacoby, yeah, he'd be the first one to tell you. He used to tell me all the time. Like, let's see a quarterback take off 60 yards. He's like, you know, you can do that, right? I'm like, man, you tripping. But like, yeah, so it was a big change. And then with me and Kevin, honestly, it's both our first times working together. You know what I'm saying? So the first week in Houston, like, that's our first time trying to pick something that I'm comfortable with. And like, it was tough, especially in the middle of the season. Like, they got to coach differently than how they coached before. They got to call plays differently than how they called before. So there's a lot of different things.
Yeah, Jeff, and the other thing is it's his first time in Kevin's offense. So the one thing that he was really good at in Houston by the time he was in his second or third year, he knew where the ball was going. The decision making was not like that, and I guess it makes sense. It's a new system, and he hadn't played in a live game in 2 years.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, you cannot simulate live NFL action, and this is why you see so many solid players in the NFL not participate in the preseason, because everybody kind of knows it's not 100%. So, to go into that, possibly risk injury, knowing you're not really going to get the full workload out of it. For Deshaun, again, I'll go back to this. It's just more of a comfortability. It's being here all the time now. I am now somebody who lives in Cleveland, Ohio. I am a huge member of the Cleveland Browns. I'm the quarterback of this team. I am Coach Stefanski's quarterback. You go to the touchdown run on Christmas Eve against New Orleans. That was something that we have never seen Coach Stefanski use in his time here, whether it was Baker Mayfield, whether it was Jacoby Brissett, understanding that Deshaun has a little bit more of an X factor as a runner than Coach Stefanski has had at any time at the position. And as much as you want to be able to use that, you want to be able to embrace it, you don't want it to be the be-all, end-all. And you understand you have this quarterback who anticipates quickly, throws a very catchable ball, hits guys on the numbers. It's just all an evolution of a relationship as this quarterback gets comfortable with Coach Stefanski, and Coach Stefanski understands, how wide, how broad he can go with his playbook to accommodate the skill set of a guy like Deshaun.
Jeff Lloyd and I are going to step aside, take one more timeout. Other side of the break, we'll take a look at the Browns relative to the cap. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. This from ESPN.com, predicting 2023 offseason moves for each team. Browns create cap space. They're $14.4 million over the cap, don't have a first-round pick. Outside of potentially Anthony Walker, Greedy Williams, or Dearness Johnson, most of their free agents won't be returning. Kevin Stefanski's team has 11 players with cap hits of $5 million or more, and all 11 are going to return in 2023. Jeff, that's good news, bad news. I think when you look at the Browns roster, the high-end talent is there. The problem was there's no middle guys that just get things done at the NFL level. And the low-end talent wasn't performing the way they needed to.
Well, you had some middling guys that, as far as money, were gone. You lost an Anthony Walker. You lost a player like Sione Takitaki. Those were guys who were playing well and were big, obviously, losses here. There's always ways to manipulate this. Obviously, Deshaun Watson at $35 million. There you go. There's your biggest can to kick down the road, which all of a sudden takes the Browns from 14 under to almost 20 over. Then you're going to get in the other scenarios. You're going to get that Kareem Hunt $6.5 million. Dearness money. Greedy comes off the books. Linebacker situation, Sione Takitaki no longer has a contract with this team. If he had been hurt earlier in the year, I think maybe the Browns would have some serious interest about getting a deal done with him quickly. Question is, when a player like Sione back, then there's the John Johnson the third money. How is that going to work out? It's going to add back up quickly for the Browns. You've already taken care of, Jack Conklin and brought him back, which maybe some people thought was a surprise. But when you try to explain to people, that on paper, it doesn't look like the Browns have money, but in actuality, they truly do. That's where you understand the justification of a move like Jack Conklin a little bit more. It's an easy fix. And it's certainly an easy fix for an analytic-based run front office where they're giving out these contracts with the straight understanding to players. Okay, this is your contract this year. Your contract's going to look vastly different next year, but it's just going to be a different way of which way you get your money. Everything will work out in the end. Obviously, players want to play with good players. Players want to be on a team where the possibility for overall team success is there. And it's just the way it works in today's NFL.
Yeah, along those lines. So the Browns and Jakeem Grant agreed to a renegotiated deal that reduced his cap charge by $1.76 million in 2023. That, according to Field Yates. So again, you just found $1.7 million, and you still are hoping to keep the special teams flyer that you never got to see.
The Jakeem Grant situation is actually, a little bit of an odd one. Here was a player I was extremely excited of. I'm sure, a lot of fans were extremely excited of. But, you take into the fact that he got injured in August and obviously missed the entire season. Donovan Peoples-Jones, as he grew as a wide receiver, the confidence in him all of a sudden showed back up as a punt returner. His first 2 years, he wasn't that guy. But now that the confidence was at an all-time high for him in the NFL, you saw him become the factor in the return game that he was at Michigan. Jerome Ford didn't do a bad job as a kick returner. I'm not sure that's, the Browns' ideal plan for Jerome Ford, for the incoming years for his time. But those two guys handled the absence of Jakeem Grant pretty well. You have now, with a new special teams coordinator coming in Bubba Ventrone, he's very pro return. I think they might have been the highest team with kickoff return attempts last season. Bubba likes to set the tone. He's aggressive. Does that maybe tip the favor for a guy like Jakeem Grant? But if you're looking at it just from return ability, Donovan had a good year last year. Jerome Ford had a good year last year. And then if you're looking at it from the receiver aspect of it, you got about those same 6 or 7 guys that are all in that same spot. And then you understand that the Browns are probably going to even bring in a little bit more competition to the room. It's going to make for a really, really interesting, way that things shake out here. For Jakeem, really, really a tough break. This could have really been a nice opportunity to hear for him with the Browns. But at 30 years old, coming off an Achilles injury, I don't know if anybody knows what truly to expect, but he'll get a chance to compete here in the spring and the summer.
All right, before I let you go, free agency mock draft. The Browns get Jordan Poyer back with Buffalo pressed to navigate a tight cap. He's represent a needed injection in both ball hawking and leadership to a defense that sorely underperformed in 2022. Again, my question is, what's the price for Jordan Poyer? I think, assuming they move off of John Johnson III, they do need a free safety.
Well, I think you could maybe say that Jordan Poyer would come in and maybe make the money that John Johnson III was making. Jordan Poyer, I think you're a little bit more confident in what his role is. Of course, we already get a little nervous. Jordan Poyer maybe hinting around that, maybe going to play in Florida for a little bit less contract, but understanding that, Uncle Sam's not going to take as much from him. Certainly, works in his favor. But I think this is one thing, and I think it works key. And I actually talked about it, the other day on our show about Bobby Wagner. I don't see a way it works financially for the Cleveland Browns anyway whatsoever. But I do think the Browns are going to look a little bit more veteran, guys who are truly leaders. Look, we all love Miles. We all know what he is. And just one of the top players in the game. But getting another guy or two in here that, when they speak, people will listen. I think that would go a long way for this defense. We heard so much about, last year, all the, the nonsense that was going on, the Kibitz behind the scenes, one D end aggravated because maybe they were setting things up for the other D end to look better. It's just not a situation that's a healthy environment. And bringing a guy like Jim Schwartz in, he's not going to stand for it. So I think you're going to start, with some of these acquisitions you're looking to make. you're going to bring in guys who, the job is the job, and I'm here to do it, and I'm here to do it to the best of my abilities. And if that means I might say something to a teammate that, went the wrong way, or he didn't appreciate it, but, it's basically laying the land, and this is the way things are going to work from now on. You need more guys like that in your locker room.
Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
Always a blast, my friend, and guys, enjoy Indy.
All right, we'll see you. Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast. Make sure you check him out. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs Podcast Network 216. Straight ahead on Sports4CLE. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Deshaun Watson talked about the dynamic he has with Kevin Stefanski, redesigning this offense with him as a starter for a full season. This is from the Q with Quincy Avery. Quincy Avery, by the way, is Deshaun Watson's personal quarterback coach.
I know that's kind of something new that you're getting from Kevin this year. I think he's one of the best play callers in the NFL.
Agreed.
How do you So we're going to be week one starter this year. How do you think that that's going to change? Like, how does that change you in the locker room? Did you get to be yourself, not being the necessarily? I mean, everybody knew they brought you in, they traded for you. You're there for a reason. Everybody knew you're the starter, and I thought that the relationship that between you, Jacoby, Josh, all you guys had in that quarterback room was so good. Just because everybody understood the situation, but how is it different now when you go there? Like, you're starting week one. Like, what do you think changes this offseason or this camp? What does that look like?
I think just the aggressiveness of this, how we want to approach the season. Last year was a lot of unknown. Like you said, the quarterback room, we all knew. We all support each other. We all loved each other. We all friends to this day. And we kind of knew Jacoby was going to come in, but we didn't know how long. We didn't know, was it going to be 11 weeks? Was it going to be 6 weeks? Was it going to be 0 weeks? You know what I'm saying? Like, there was so much of this kind of unknown. And so it kind of put everybody on hold until we figured out a week before. And so now going into this week, we kind of have clarity. We can start from day one of OTA. All right, this is how we want to approach it. We need to find our playmakers. This is the way we run our offense. This is the way we want to call our offense. We want to play fast. We want to play slow, no huddle. So all these things that we're doing, we can kind of already adjust and have, be ahead of the game.
And with that, let's welcome in Tyler Johnson, Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216. Tyler, the very beginning of that I found really interesting. That's Deshaun's personal quarterback coach, has been for a while. Both of them quick to credit the play calling of Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, Dave. I mean, Kevin Stefanski, a lot of fans are talking about Kevin Stefanski and not really happy with the play calling that we've seen here last year, but even the last couple years. And I think you go back, not even last year, but the year before, you had a quarterback that was playing injured, Baker Mayfield, that took away from some of Kevin's play calling ability and ability to call certain plays, just due to the fact you're playing with a quarterback that basically has one shoulder. And this year, you saw Jacoby Brissett, you saw how the offense looked with him there, and then you transitioned to Deshaun Watson, a guy who had not played football. I mean, you're talking nearly 2 years that Deshaun Watson since he had started an NFL game. And it didn't click that well. And I wasn't surprised by that. And I think what I was telling fans is that we need to understand Deshaun Watson hasn't played football in a very long time. One, there's going to be rust. And he even admitted to that there was more rust that he even thought there would be. But also for Stefanski, these are guys that have never worked together before. You can have training camp and you can practice together all you want, but until you get out on an actual football field in a live game setting, it's completely different. And the offense is going to look different this year. The Browns brought in Bill Musgrave as an offensive assistant, veteran coach who's been around the entire NFL. A lot of experience, especially with Stefanski, even in Minnesota when he was the Vikings offensive coordinator. And most recently, he was with Cal, the University of California, for 3 years as their offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. And there's going to be some different wrinkles to this offense this year. You're going to see more shotgun. You're going to see more running out of the gun, like we saw a little bit at the end of last year. But it takes time to click with these things. And I think that's what fans need to understand. It's not a simple process. Like, it takes time. And I think with a full year of Stefanski and Watson working together, I'm really excited to see what this offense has in store in 2023.
So you mentioned Bill Musgrave added as an offensive assistant, senior offensive assistant. So Alex Van Pelt will now be the new quarterback coach. He was quarterback coach before. Just what do you think about that move by Kevin Stefanski?
I like this a lot. Mary Kay Cabot, of course, from cleveland.com, said that Watson really likes Alex Van Pelt a lot. And I think what's important to remember with AVP, before he was even in Cleveland, he was in Green Bay. And Aaron Rodgers has made it very known that he was not happy that the Packers did not find a way to keep Alex Van Pelt in Green Bay. They had a great relationship together. Also, it's important to know that AVP had the best year that we've seen from Baker Mayfield in his career. That was in 2020. He has a ton of experience as a quarterback coach, even going back to before Green Bay when he was in Cincinnati with Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton, had stellar not like Pro Bowl numbers with the Bengals, but he was all around a solid quarterback and even has some records from the Bengals. So I love the addition of Alex Van Pelt as quarterback coach. And I'll say this, obviously we don't know for sure, but I have a feeling Watson and Stefanski talked together and this move was suggested and Deshaun Watson was fully on board. Because I'm going to say a lot of moves on offense this year, you know that Watson is having an input to some extent. I'm very happy with the move, and I think you're doing what suits AVP as well, moving him back to quarterback coach, which is really his strength.
Yeah, and Deshaun Watson should have input on the offense, and Kevin Stefanski should tailor the offense around Deshaun Watson because those two are going to be linked together. They're either going to succeed or fail together. Along those lines, one thing you can do to help him succeed, get him some wide receivers. Let's talk about a couple of guys. So I know you've kind of touched on these. Corey Davis, potential option from the Jets. Robert Woods, recently cut by the Titans. Browns had interest last year. What are your thoughts on those two and how they might fit?
Mm-hmm. So first off, I'm going to start with Robert Woods because he is the one that the Browns were linked to last year, according to Diana Rossini from ESPN. Before the Titans made the trade for Robert Woods, the Browns had a lot of interest. They were actually trying to get Robert Woods and pair him with Amari Cooper. At the time, it sounds like the Titans just offered more, so the Rams took that trade. I would love Robert Woods. He's been a solid veteran receiver in the NFL. He did have his lowest grade this year, according to Pro Football Focus. He had a 68 overall grade. And some of his stats were down. 527 yards, 53 receptions, only 2 touchdowns. But keep in mind, Ryan Tannehill, not the greatest quarterback in Tennessee, but you keep in mind, too, that he also was playing with Malik Willis from time to time and Josh Dobbs. It's not like there was a lot of great quarterback play in Tennessee, but before that, he was in LA. He performed very well with the Rams. And that's under Jared Goff at the time. Jared Goff was the Rams quarterback where he had one of his best years in 2020, 936 yards, 6 touchdowns, 90 receptions. Can play inside, can play outside, exactly what you want. Now, again, with Robert Woods, the issue, the Browns do need speed at that position. They do. Robert Woods does not necessarily bring that speed to you, but what he brings you is a veteran presence, a veteran slot receiver, someone you know who can get open and can make plays with the ball in his hands. Now, Corey Davis, keep him on the radar because of the fact he is a former first-round pick, and we've talked about it before. Andrew Berry loves former first-round picks. Corey Davis, 6'3", 209 pounds out of Western Michigan. He was the 5th overall selection in 2017. Now, he hasn't lived up to that hype by any means, but he's still been a solid wide receiver in the NFL. This past year with the Jets, 536 yards, 2 touchdowns, 32 receptions with a revolving door at quarterback. Mike White, Zach Wilson, again, not stellar quarterback play. Corey Davis has had to deal with, but with this time with the Jets, he's a guy that I think they could end up cutting again. They would end up saving cap space if they were to do so, and I think that's why the Jets could look to explore that. They save $10 million if they move on from him. But why would the Browns be interested? Former first-round pick. Corey Davis also can play inside and outside. You think 6'3", and so you think, well, he's going to be an outside receiver. The Jets put Corey Davis in the slot, and they lined him outside. If you have versatility at the wide receiver position, the Browns are going to give you a look.
All right, along those lines, and you tweeted this one out. If the Browns go wide receiver at 42, North Carolina's Josh Downs has to be the choice. Has the speed, separation ability the team desperately needs to add to their offense, not to mention he can play in the slot. So there's your versatility and speed. I guess the question is, do you think they may try to go veteran, or do you think they go with a rookie at wide receiver in the draft?
See, I need to correct this tweet also because people point out, and this is on me, Josh Downs is actually specifically a slot receiver. So in this case for the Browns, that would be even better. You can go 2 ways here. I think you can, like you said, you could pursue either one. I wouldn't be shocked if they did both this year. You know that they're going to get more into shotgun this year. They're going to be doing more 4 and 5 wide receivers. And you took David Bell in the 3rd round. I mean, that doesn't preclude you from taking a wide receiver this year, regardless if you add a veteran. But if you're going in the draft, I don't know Josh Downs will be there at number 42, but he is just a solid overall football player. When you look at highlights of him, his separation ability just really stands out to you at that slot position. He's graded out very well the last couple of years, 82.2 this year, and then an 82 the year before. Really good numbers playing with Drake May at North Carolina. This past year, 94 receptions, over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, 5'10", 175 pounds. He fits that mold as a slot receiver that you could be looking for if you're the Browns. I'm not against signing a guy or trading for one and drafting a guy like Downs. I'm really not, because if you are going to open up that playbook and we're going to see a lot more shotgun this year like we've talked about, why not have as many options as possible on the outside? Outside of Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, David Bell, I don't really know who else is a lock at wide receiver. So adding Downs, adding possibly another veteran, you're just going to boost that wide receiver room, and I think that's exactly what the Browns need to be doing. You need to give Deshaun Watson as many weapons as possible, and Josh Downs is a guy who can come in, I believe, and contribute right away in the NFL.
Along those lines, Deshaun Watson was asked on the Q with Quincy Avery. We heard from some of that earlier. He was asked about a possible reunion with DeAndre Hopkins.
Well, it just really depends on, like, you know, if it's serious or not, as far as kind of like if we can really get him. So that's something that, you know, you got to be able to look overall, you know, cap space, trade, different things like that. You know, talk to the coaches, being able to see if, like, all right, this is something serious that can really happen. And once you kind of know, then it's like, all right, you just kind of, you know, communicate with them, not too serious. You know, me and D-Hop been friends for a while, so, you know, we actually going to be in the same area probably this weekend. So, you know, we're going to chop it up and see where things kind of hold place. But, you know, nothing guaranteed. You just kind of let it flow from there.
And again, Tyler, it's very interesting. He mentioned that, talking to him and seeing if it's possible. There will be an interest with Hopkins joining Watson. He had productive years with him. So that's just something to monitor. I have no idea if Andrew Berry is serious about it, but we're going to keep an ear out for that one.
Yeah. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins coming to the Browns. Once again, I mean, we've talked about this before, Dave. I don't see it due to not only the compensation, which, again, the compensation for me, possibly a 3rd round pick, maybe a late second. That doesn't really bother me. It's more so the potential contract that you're giving DeAndre Hopkins, being 31 years old, wanting to still be one of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. I don't know if that's something Andrew Berry is looking at. Now, I'm sure you inquire because, again, Watson, I'm sure, would love to, like you mentioned, reunite with DeAndre Hopkins. Is it feasible? I think Watson, you can kind of tell by the tone of his voice that he knows it might not necessarily be possible, but I think they're absolutely going to explore it. And if there's a way for them to do it, and maybe DeAndre Hopkins is willing to take a pay cut, again, we don't know if he'd be willing to do that to rejoin Watson. If that becomes part of it and he would be willing to do that, then maybe it becomes a lot more of a possibility for the Browns. But right now, I just still can't see it due to the potential compensation and a contract that it'll cost to acquire him.
Yep, without a question. It would have to be at a better price point for Andrew Berry. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns, look some free agents on the defensive side of the ball. Sports for CLE, we'll be right back. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast as well as Network 216. So key stats to know for Pro Football Focus's top 25 free agents. We're going to look at some of them on the defensive line and defensive backfield as well. Javon Hargraves, 91.1 pass rush grade, 2022 ranked 5th in the NFL, 3rd among interior defenders. Jesse Bates, PFF's highest-ranked safety in 2020, ranks 4th among all safeties since then. 21, Marcus Davenport recorded a 70-plus PFF grade in every season he's been in the league. Draymond Jones, 14.5 pressure percentage since 2019, ranks 8th best among interior defenders. And defensive tackle Zach Allen set career highs, PFF grade 71.4, pass rush grade 71.6, run defense grade, and 67.4 in 2022. All right, you look at all of those, Tyler. Hargrave and Bates are probably not in the price range because those are going to be pretty significant. Although Bates, you never know. Do you think Davenport, Jones, or Allen on the Browns' radar at a 7-8 million price point?
I think Marcus Davenport would be on the Browns' price, like in their price range there. I think he's going to be a little bit more expensive because this is a guy that has all the talent in the world, didn't really put it together with the Saints. And I think if maybe he wasn't battling some injury and wasn't as inconsistent, you'd be looking at a guy who's going to make $20+ million a year on the market right now. I would love Marcus Davenport, again, former first-round pick, and that's a siren for Andrew Berry in that front office. He will be someone I am almost sure they will take a look at. Whether that price point for them is realistic remains to be seen. But keep in mind, with the Browns, with Jadeveon Clowney, I mean, he was coming off injury in Tennessee and wasn't super consistent even before that, and they were still interested. Former first-round pick, obviously, and the Browns made that deal happen. Could be a similar situation with Marcus Davenport. Draymond Jones, I love Draymond Jones. As an Ohio State Buckeye fan, the fact of being able to bring him back to Cleveland, back to Ohio would be awesome. I don't know if that one's going to be possible because we're looking at, it looks like Daron Payne is going to be franchise tagged by the Commanders. Looks like Dalvin Tomlinson might be redoing his contract with the Vikings in order for them to keep him. So that's 2 premier defensive tackles off the market. And then you're looking at Javon Hargrave, who you mentioned earlier, who I believe will be completely out of the Browns' price range, and Draymond Jones as the 2 top defensive tackles available. So I think someone's going to really overpay for Draymond Jones. I don't think it'll be the Browns that does it. I think Zach Allen is a much more reasonable option for the Browns given his price point. Now, he hasn't really done much until this season. So does that worry Andrew Berry seeing 1-year production? It didn't a couple years ago when the Browns were looking to add a pass rusher and they explored Trey Hendrickson before he ended up signing with the Bengals. The Browns did explore that type of deal, and Hendrickson at the time only had 1 year of production. So similar to Zach Allen, I think Allen and Davenport are more realistic guys the Browns will look at. Draymond Jones, I bet they'll inquire. It'll be too much. Same with Bates and Hargrave. I just think as much as I would love to add those types of talents, I just think it'd be too much for the Browns at that particular price.
Yeah, I think they need to add 4 or 5 guys in that 7, 8. If you want to go up to 12 on an edge, I get you. But they need to add numbers of veterans that can come in and really reshape what they do. Along those lines, I know you wrote about Carl Lawson and Sheldon Rankins, options for the Browns, both with the Jets. Let's also lump in Zach Cunningham, potential linebacker, and he's got ties to Schwartz. Take us through those 3 and what you think, and I know you've written on these as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll start with Carl Lawson. I think he's the most intriguing of particularly these 3 guys. The reason he's the most intriguing is he owned a pressure rate of 14.3%. From 2017 to 2020 when he was with the Bengals. That was 4th in the entire NFL. The Browns were looking for a defensive end at the end of the 2020 season. In that free agency period, Lawson ended up costing too much. It's similar with Hendrickson. The reason the Browns didn't go out, spend a ton of money that free agency, defensive ends were really at a premium as far as their price points, and the Browns didn't enter it. Lawson coming off injury, if you could get him in the $6 to $8 million year range, and I would assume it'd be 1 year so he could rebuild his value, sign me up for that. To me, that would be an absolute no-brainer to pair him next to Myles Garrett, because you could still also draft a young defensive end too. Sheldon Rankins, once again, Dave, former first-round pick. He will be on Andrew Berry's radar in some capacity. There's nothing about Sheldon Rankins that is going to absolutely blow you away. That's just the way it is. But he's a solid football player. The Browns need solid defensive linemen. That's exactly what Rankins is. He's rumored looks like it's going to cost about $6 million a year for his services. 73.1 grade this past year, 33 tackles. He had 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Again, he's not going to be a guy that's going to blow you away. Just an overall solid football player. I would love him as an option. I think him anchoring that line, you could still bring in another guy on the cheap, draft another guy, but they need veteran leadership at the defensive tackle position. And finally, Zach Cunningham. Zach Cunningham is someone that I don't think a lot of Browns fans are going to necessarily want. The main reason I connect him to us is the Schwartz connection. Now, only 15 solo tackles last year. He battled a lot of injury throughout the course of last year. In the last couple of years, he really has. He's actually played the same amount of games, though, as Jacob Phillips in that time frame. So just something to keep in mind there. He's still at a relatively young age, 28 years old, 6'3", 230 pounds. Solid tackler when he's been on the field. And again, I just think having that familiarity with Jim Schwartz's system there is going to be huge for Zach Cunningham. And I think that's a reason the Browns could, if they're looking to bring in a linebacker, they might want to bring back Taki and Anthony Walker, and then you just run it back. If they do, that's fine with me. But Zach Cunningham would be a name to watch there if the Browns do decide to add a linebacker.
Tyler Johnson and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll continue to look at what the Browns can do to get things turned around in 2023. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tyler Johnson from the Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216. This from the 33rd team. They tweet out 3 ways the Browns can get fixed. Number 1, strengthen the interior defensive line. Number 2, address the safety position. And number 3, find a new slot receiver. 33rd team is former NFL executives, front office personnel types. Tyler, yeah, and if the slot receiver has speed, even better.
Yeah, every single thing that they mentioned there is what the Browns need to do. You look at the interior defensive line, you have to add at a minimum 2 new defensive tackles. Now, could the Browns bring back Taven Bryan? I think that is a possibility that they bring him back, but you have to still add somebody else as a veteran. I'll be honest, I wish we would add 3 new defensive tackles. I just think that room was underperformed so bad last year that you have to do something. I know we're relying on Jim Schwartz to come in and fix everything. He also needs the personnel in order to do so. I'm hoping that Andrew Berry can get him the defensive tackles that he needs for his system. Also getting another solid defensive end would be nice because I think they're going to have to, especially with losing Jadeveon Clowney. So the Browns are going to look at defensive end, defensive tackle, pretty much everywhere in the defense, because then they also mentioned the safety position. A lot of free agents that could be available at the safety position for a bargain price. You look at Juan Thornhill, Marcus Epps, who is in Philadelphia and played under Jim Schwartz when Jim Schwartz was the defensive coordinator with the Philadelphia Eagles. Those are some names that really stick out to me. Rodney McLeod has experience with Jim Schwartz as well from his time in Philly. There are options there, and they need to be free safety options. The Browns do not have a true free safety. I think, too, from the NFL Combine, we're going to find out one way or another what happens with John Johnson III this offseason. Are the Browns going to stick with him because he is due a $1 million roster bonus in the next couple weeks here? We're going to find out if the Browns are going to stick with him, or we'll see if the Browns end up moving on. I think they're going to end up moving on from John Johnson III, which it's unfortunate it didn't work out like we all had hoped, but that's the way it goes in the NFL sometimes. And finally, the slot receiver, you can address that through the draft, free agency, or via trade. I would like it to be preferably through trade if you can find an option there. But at the same time, Robert Woods is available. He is former slot receiver, not necessarily the guy that's going to burn you away. But again, we talked about, Dave, just solid all-around football players. So Robert Woods is a guy to look at in the slot. If they go the draft route, we talked about him earlier in the show, but Josh Downs out of North Carolina, the perfect. I mean, you can't draw up a perfect slot receiver unless you look at Josh Downs' profile, and that's exactly what the Browns need. They need speed at the position. They need someone that can consistently separate, and they need speed. That's exactly what Downs has. He would give it to you. Whether he's there at 42, I don't know. You might have to trade up for him. Will the Browns even stay at 42 this year? Oh, that's going to be a lot of fun speculation as we wait for the NFL draft. But, yeah, I agree with everything they said there.
All right, before we go, 4 Browns that will benefit the most from Jim Schwartz's addition as defensive coordinator. Number 4, Deshaun Watson, a full off season. Be the biggest factor in Watson's improvement in 2023, but having a defense that's disciplined and can get teams off the field on third down, huge benefit for him. Number 3, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. 2 reasons Schwartz will help JOK return to form. There will be a third linebacker on the field in most situations. That extra body will cover and make it much easier for the undersized player not to get buried. 2, Schwartz is going to be asking Andrew Berry fix the defensive tackle position, which will also keep bodies off of him. Number 2, Myles Garrett. Garrett tends to get held almost every play, and if Schwartz can find a way to get him one-on-one looks, even 10 snaps a game, Garrett could have a 20-plus sack season in 2023. And number 1, Denzel Ward. Both Newsome and Ward thrive in man coverage, struggle to make tackles. Woods was consistently in zone and asked his corners to squeeze plays inside on run support, which consistently botched by both. And Tyler, I couldn't agree more with Denzel Ward. I think they asked him to do some things that just weren't his strengths, and that's one of the reasons he just didn't look like himself a season ago. I'm really intrigued by JOK as well.
Yeah, with Denzel Ward, he is best when he's playing man coverage. That's really what he's known for, even coming from his time at Ohio State. That's the type of corner that he is. Jim Schwartz is going to get back to that, and I think Denzel Ward is going to have a bounce-back season for the Browns. I can't wait to see his performance this year. I'm a big Denzel Ward fan. I know he struggled last year, but, again, came on at the end of last year, so I think that's really encouraging. And, again, with JOK, I think kind of like what was said here, having a third linebacker is going to do wonders for him. It'll allow him to go from sideline to sideline a lot more often. But what the key is, though, kind of like you mentioned, defensive tackle. You have to have defensive tackles that can eat up blocks. If you don't have that, it's going to make it very difficult for your linebackers to make plays. So once again, it comes down to Andrew Berry to make the personnel moves in order to get Jim Schwartz the defensive tackles that he needs that are going to not only for a system, but to fix this Browns defense and make them better in 2023.
Tyler Johnson, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tyler.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Really appreciate it. All
right, Tyler Johnson, make sure to check him out. Faithful Dawgs podcast, as well as Network 216. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. A reminder, we will join you tomorrow from Indianapolis in the NFL Scouting Combine. We'll be there Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll hear from Andrew Berry. We'll hear from Kevin Stefanski. And we will have plenty of talk about the Browns free agency and the draft. We are at the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis tomorrow at 4. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 from Indianapolis on Sports4CLE.